Hey everyone, welcome back to another TxePrep AMC Amy video, and in this video we're going to talk about the AMC 10A 2020 problem number 1. And it's not just problem number 1, it's going to be problem numbers 1 through 5, and I'm actually going to create a series where we look through almost all the problems in this test. So let's get started with this test. So what value of x satisfies x minus 3 over 4 is equal to a 5/12 minus 1/3? So whenever we have fractions, the best thing to do is always get rid of the fractions and make it only in whole numbers. So I'm going to multiply this entire expression by 12 because that is the lowest common factor of all of these denominators over here. So when I distribute everything over here, this is going to be 12x minus 3/4 times 12, which is simply just minus 9. And that's going to be equal to 5, because 12 times 5/12 is just 5, and 12 times negative 1/3 is simply just going to be 4. So now we can just solve this equation over here. So the right side gives us just 1, and this means 12x is equal to 9 plus 1, which is 10, and thus x is equal to 5/6. So this is problem number 1. And now let's look at problem number 2. The numbers 3, 5, 7, a and b have an average of 15. What is the average of a and b? Well, first we want to find out first we want to try expressing the sum of all these numbers in terms of a and b. And since we know that there are 5 terms and there's an average of 15, that means we know that the sum of all these terms must be 75. And the reason we know that is simply because there's 15, which is the average, times the number of terms, which is 5. So 15 times 5 is 75. So we can write this as 3 plus 5 plus 7 plus a plus b is equal to 75. And 3 plus 5 plus 7 is simply just 15. And that means a plus b is equal to 60. So now that we know what a plus b is, we can apply the same logic as before, that the number of terms times the average is equal to the sum of these two values. So the number of terms over here is 2, and I'm just going to call the average, I'm just going to say that 2 times the average is equal to the sum of the terms. And the sum of the terms over here is 60, which means the average is equal to simply just 30. So that's our answer for problem number 2. So now let's look at problem number 3. So we're saying that assuming a does not equal to 3, and b does not equal to 4, and c does not equal to 5, what is the value of this expression in simplest form? So immediately there's nothing that we can obviously cancel out, but luckily there's a trick that we can see. So if we have the number x minus y, and we want to convert it to the number y minus x, the way we can do that is multiply the original expression by -1. Because when you distribute that in, that'll become negative x, and the negatives and the negatives cancel out to become positive, so negative x plus y, which can be written as y minus x. So that's the key insight that is there for this problem over here. So when we do that, what we're going to do is rewrite some of these terms in that order. So I can rewrite 3 minus a as -1 times a minus 3. I can rewrite 4 minus b as -1 times b minus 4. And I can rewrite 5 minus c as -1 times c minus 5. And there we go. I can start canceling all these terms because all these things are being multiplied. So c minus 5 cancels over here, b minus 4 cancels over here, and a minus 3 cancels over here, leaving us with -1 times -1 times -1, which is simply just equal to -1. And that's the final answer for this problem over here. So now let's look at problem number 4. So the problem reads, a driver travels for 2 hours at 60 miles per hour, and during which her car gets 30 miles per gallon of gasoline. She's paid $0.50 per mile, and her only expense is gasoline at $2 per gallon. What is her net rate of pay in dollars per hour after this expense? So the first thing we want to do is find out how many miles she actually travels, and doing that isn't too hard because we know that she travels for 2 hours at 60 miles per hour, meaning that she travels a total distance of 120 miles. The next thing to calculate is how much she actually gets paid for that 120 miles. So since she gets paid $0.50 for each mile, that means she'll get paid a total of $60 during the entire trip. Now we need to calculate her expense. And we see that she gets 30 miles per gallon, meaning that she needs to get 4 gallons of fuel because she's traveling for 120 miles, and 120 divided by 30 is 4. And the price of each gallon of gas is $2, as shown over here, meaning that she spends a total of $8 on expenses. So she spends a total of $8 on expenses. That means her total pay will be 60 minus 8. And 60 minus 8 is simply just going to be 52. And now remember, this is going to be for 2 hours of work, but we want to calculate how much she gets per hour. And in order to calculate how much she gets per hour, we simply just have to divide this by 2, meaning that she gets $26 per hour during this trip, which is actually our final answer. So now let's move on to problem number 5. So here's problem number 5. What is the solution for all real numbers x for which x squared minus 12x plus 34 and the absolute value of that is equal to 2? And the way we want to deal with absolute values is kind of branch this equation off into two different possibilities. So one of them would be x squared minus 12x plus 34 is equal to negative 2 because of the absolute value, or x squared minus 12x plus 34 is simply just equal to 2. So both of these will be considered solutions for this equation over here. So I'll just start with solving the left hand first. So when we subtract 2 from both sides, this leaves us with x squared minus 12x plus 32 is equal to 0. And this can simply be factored into x minus 4 times x minus 8. And on this side, we have x squared minus 12x plus 34 is equal to negative 2. And the way we can solve that is simply just add 2 to both sides, leaving us with x squared minus 12x plus 36 is equal to 0. And this is simply just the definition of what x minus 6 squared is. So you can rewrite this as x minus 6 squared is equal to 0. And when I solve for that, that would give me x is equal to 6. And when I solve for this equation over here, I would get x is equal to 4 and 8. And since there's an and over here, this means our solutions are 4, 8, and 6. And when we add 4, 8, and 6 together, that means that the sum is simply just going to be 18, which is our final answer for this problem.